Start this by saying, live from Sunset Boulevard in Los Angeles, by way of 50th Street in scenic Hyde Park, Chicago. And I guess that's where we are, and a lot of other places as well. I want to welcome so many friends who are out there. I can see your names flashing by on the chat line. So be patient with us. We're not going to have much media here tonight. You're just going to have to settle for looking at me, and toward the end, you're going to get some entertainment because Janice is going to be here and she's going to play flute for you and read a poem that appears in her book. Let me say a little bit about the book Mental Traveler. But first, I want to say something about books, and that's the importance of independent bookstores like Book Soup and Bookseller, where we appeared last week. Independent bookstores are the lifeblood of authorship and writing in this country, and I hope you will all, deaf to Amazon, up with with Book Soup and Bookseller and all the other Seminary Co-op, 57th Street Books. Hooray for them. Mental Traveler, a father, a son, and a journey through schizophrenia, is a book that's primarily about my son, Gabriel Mitchell, who suffered from schizophrenia for 20 years. But it's about much more than his illness and suffering. It's also about his ambitions to transform that illness into a source of insight. As he often said, I want to transform schizophrenia from a death sentence into a learning experience. As he put it, if I'm going to be crazy, I want to be really good at it. I want to be the Michael Jordan of crazy. Well, Gabe had a very magnetic personality. He drew his family, friends, and many others into his ambitions, even as he often felt intensely lonely, as if he had been cast out from society, which is one of the side effects of schizophrenia. Because, as he often said, the problem with schizophrenia is it's not just the symptoms, it's the stigma. It's a double whammy. The stigma is a kind of social death. Toward the end of his life, he began to affirm his identity as a, quote, schizophrenic, unquote. A very politically incorrect label, but one that he said, if they're going to label me that, and that's going to be my identity, I will assert it. So he became militant politically about inhabiting the identity of a schizophrenic. Gabe also was a charismatic schizophrenic who drew his family, friends, and many others into his ambitions, even as he felt intensely lonely. He took his own life at age 38, just as he seemed on course to achieve something quite wonderful as a filmmaker. And this is a lesson I think all of us need to learn. Whatever schizophrenia is, and I don't pretend to know what it is, it seems to be a grab bag of every kind of mental affliction, from hallucinations to depression to anxiety, paranoia, all rolled into one big package. Whatever it is, it's something he was determined to struggle with and to transform from an affliction into what he called a learning experience. But it's a very dangerous illness because 10% of people who suffer from schizophrenia wind up trying to hurt themselves, and men are much more successful at it than women for some reason. We're really good at offing ourselves. So he seemed really on the verge. He'd been making films for several years, independent films, small films, writing one film script after another. He came up with a project for which he made a pilot. The pilot is called Crazy Talk. The film was going to be called Histoire de la Folie, based on Godard's Histoire du Cinéma. It was going to be a 9-hour epic of mental illness, madness in the ancient world, in the modern world, and everywhere in between. The whole planet seemed seen as Erasmus put it, a ship of fools. Gabe was convinced that madness is an things like irrationality, mental disorders, delusion, emotional excess and distress are not incidental deviations from the human condition, but actually foundational to whatever it means to be a member of our crazy species that is subject to group psychology in the form of mass hysteria, panic, anxiety, and obsession. So madness for him, as his project developed, became not just a psychological, but a political phenomenon, a claim which I think has never seemed truer than in the present moment of human history. As he said, we are all mental travelers, all passengers on a global ship of fools, with lives filled with detours, impasses, and moments ranging from despair to grandeur. Last week, I did a reading of the book at Bookseller in Chicago, and I read scenes that showed what it was like to deal with someone experiencing a psychotic break. I don't want to reread those this week. That was really the dark side of this story, how difficult it is to comfort a person who's in the grip of psychological torment. This week, I want to emphasize more his grand ambitions as an artist and filmmaker. But first, I have to get Bill Ayers back on the line here because Bill is going to have to join us by phone. So, Bill, you still there? Bill, you still there? I'm not sure. I better dial him again. Call Bill Ayers.
Which phone number for calling Bill Ayers? Mobile.
Okay, Bill should be on the line in just a second here. Hey, Bill, you there?
Yeah.
Okay,
I'm
good.
sorry.
I'm about to read from chapter 1. First, I'll mention the title of the book, Mental Traveler, comes from a poem by William Blake by that title. It begins, I traveled through a land of men and women too, and heard and saw such dreadful things as cold earth wanderers never knew. I think it's Blake's greatest poem. And like his father, Gabe was a reader of William Blake from very early in his life. I read to Carmen, his sister, and him from Songs of Innocence and Experience as they were learning to read. So the first chapter of this book is called I Need to Become Homeless. In the fall of 1991, I received an urgent phone message from Gabriel just a few weeks after he enrolled as a freshman at NYU. He had something important to tell me, and I must call back immediately. When I made the call, he got right to the point. Dad, he said, I've discovered the authentic way of life. It's obvious that I have to give up everything and become homeless. After a beat, I said, well, that's really, really interesting. I'm sure NYU has great programs in social work that will be just the thing if you want to work with the homeless. No, Dad, I don't want to work with the homeless. I need to become homeless. You and Mom are completely clueless about what life really is. You live in an illusion of comfort, surrounded by your books and records and your warm house. The homeless are the only people I've met here who are in touch with reality. So I tried to take up the reality principle. Yes, I said, they are in touch with reality, but it's no fun. It's a terrible reality filled with suffering. They go hungry. They sleep on park benches. But he was ready for that. What do you really know about it? Have you talked to homeless people? Hung out with them? You're the one who's refusing to see the reality. Well, this wasn't the first time Gabe had told me how clueless his mother and I were. Gabe had spent his high school years roaming Chicago with his graffiti gang, skateboarding and partying, smoking dope. I knew he had seen aspects of life in the city that were terra incognita to me in my cloistered academic life and my wife Janice, a composer and performer in the city's avant-garde music scene. But becoming homeless, this was a new twist. The next shoe dropped when he told me that he needed an advance on his allowance because he'd given most of his book money to the panhandlers in Washington Square. When they would ask him for help to get something to eat, he would take them to lunch. When they told him they had no place to sleep, he tried to smuggle them into the dorm. But the people at the dorm don't like it much. They say it's against some policy, which is ridiculous because it's my room and you're paying for it. I have a right to bring my friends here. When he told me that he'd given his winter coat to a homeless man, I decided to keep him on the phone as long as possible. I changed the subject to sports and Michael Jordan and the Bulls who were ruling our little world at that time. And we talked about going to a game over Christmas vacation, which led to a happy ending to this moment. Speaking of Christmas, Dad, you suppose I could ask Santa for a new CD player? Absolutely, I said, and I can still feel the sigh of relief at this return to normal materialism. I suppressed the urge to ask him where he was going to plug it in when he was sleeping on a park bench. What I didn't know at that time was that Gabe was falling into a mental illness that would go on over a 20-year struggle and finally cause him to end his life in a sudden and unexpected way. 20 years later, just short of his 39th birthday. So this book is the story of those decades. And as I mentioned before, there are lots of episodes in the book. It's trying to tell the truth as clearly as I can about what schizophrenia is like. I have to say, I don't think Gabriel was severely schizophrenic. He was not catatonic, for instance, although he could be, as he could engage in lucid dreaming. He could spend a long time staring out the window. And I have many pictures of him that I cherish, where from when he was 4 years old to when he was in his 30s, when he was just staring out the window, lost in thought. And that's very characteristic. Sometimes schizophrenia is simply disappearing into your mind, into another world that is a mirror of this one, but also quite different. He was also rarely violent, but he finally, he did begin to act out in a way that forced us to commit him to a hospital. He was only there for a few weeks. And then he accepted medication. He was medicated with Haldol. And I will never forget him saying, Dad, they tell me I have a thought disorder, but with this Haldol, I don't have any thoughts. I feel like I'm living underwater. So medication, which seems pretty important, if not essential, to the treatment of schizophrenia, is always a mixed blessing because it can stop some of the positive symptoms, but the negative symptoms that go with the medication, which is usually a kind of sedative, strong sedative, especially for somebody who's intellectually ambitious, it can feel very disabling. So that's the overall arc of the story. And I could tell you stories about his having to drop out of NYU, dramatic moments of various kinds. But I'm going to go further into the book to the second chapter, which I haven't read before, but which is goes back to his childhood. An episode when he was 10 years old. We had a father-son day in New York, and I asked him what would he like to do. Empire State Building, Statue of Liberty, whatever you want. 10 years old, he said, I want to visit Mad Magazine. So I said, all right, I'll call him up and see if we can do that. So I called and I said, can I bring my son over? He loves your magazine. He's just started subscribing and he wants the tour. They said, well, we don't really have a tour, but you can come by. We arrived at Mad's offices that afternoon, stepping off the elevator into a shabby, linoleum-floored, fluorescent-lit 10 by 10 space with a Swedish modern sofa and chairs upholstered in cracked plastic and a coffee table strewn with old copies of Mad in Finnish, Japanese, and Turkish. In the corner was a statue of Alfred E. Newman, Mad's moronic what me worry icon of clueless nerdiness, with a plastic pigeon perched on his head. The receptionist, a large woman with Coke bottle glasses, was too deeply absorbed in her work, evidently, to bother with us. She ignored us. After a few minutes, I got her attention and reminded her I'd called her earlier in the day. She gave me a blank look and then turned around to yell to someone in the inner offices, "Hey, that kid is here for the tour." Two men emerged from the inner sanctum, each grabbing one of Gabe's arms and lifting him from the floor. They ran him through the inner offices with his legs dangling for about half a minute, then circled back to the lobby where they deposited him on the floor. "Okay, kid, that's your tour." Took us a heartbeat to realize the whole thing was a put on. They burst out laughing and said, "Okay, kid, what would you really like to see?" Of course, Gabe wanted to meet William Gaines, Don Martin, editor Harvey Kurtzman, and all the demented artists who made Mad such an irresistible read for adolescent boys and their recovering adolescent fathers. But the artists, we were told, rarely showed up at the magazine's offices. Most of them live in a nut house and can't be allowed to roam around free. "Really?" Gabe asked. "No, not really," they admitted. They amended the story then to say that the artists work from home in appropriate squalor and destitution and only came in to hand in their artwork because they couldn't afford postage. "So if we can't see the artists, can we see some of the original artwork?" We were led to a long row of filing cabinets adorned with labels like dirty picture file, obscene picture file, wacky picture file, and stupid picture file. "How do you ever find anything?" Gabe asked. "Who said we find anything?" said our guide. "We live for the present in a constant state of demented amnesia." Nevertheless, there was a secret order of some kind. They managed to go right to the things we wanted to see. The original drawings for early covers, like the parody of the radio program, The Shadow, "Who knows what evil lurks in the hearts of men," featuring its anti-hero, Shadowski Boom Boom. We reveled in the sketches of Spy versus Spy and the mad parodies of Aliens and Tom Cruise's Top Gun, which was then the current issue. The editors asked Gabe then how old he was, and when he told them he was just 10, they nodded approvingly. "You are our target audience," they said. 13-year-old boys are the primary readership of Mad. If we hook you at 10, we have you for life." As a charter subscriber, by the way, I can testify this is true. Then they asked Gabe how he liked the tour. He said, "It was cool, really, a great relief. I was worried you guys might be all slick and corporate, but you are even crazier than I hoped." They complimented him on his taste and discernment, telling him the fact that he was already a subscriber at 10 could only mean one of two things. Either you are really, really precocious, or you are completely out of your mind. I think of this episode as one of the things that gave Gabe an anchor to affirm. I mean, the good old Mad magazine allowed him to say, "Yes, I'm mad. So what?" Or as he said, "If I'm going to be crazy, I want to be the Michael Jordan of crazy. I'm not just going to be suffering from this. I'm going to make something out of it." So what did he make? If I could share my screen here, I would show you his website, filmworks.com. You can get that on your own browser right now. You have to spell Filmworks the way he did, PHILMWORX. Filmworks.com, which contains a great deal of his work, films, poems, songs, drawings. His drawings, especially for one of the most magnificent works of art that he designed. He didn't get to finish it, but he designed it, and it was later finished by the artist Anthony Gormley. That's a work of art called The Infinite Cube. a 10 by 10 by 10 glass cube with 1,000 LED lights inside of it, infinitely mirrored, so that when you look into it from any angle, you are looking into an infinite abyss. Gabe designed this, made models for it. He shared them with Gormley, and after Gabe passed, Gormley called me up and said, "I want to make Gabe's cube." They had established quite a good friendship, and he was really determined to do it. So the cube is now in the Smart Museum at University of Chicago, and you can see images about it on his website. You can also see a film about him on his website by his sister, Carmen. It is called Infinite Light, and in 5 minutes, it tells you so much more about Gabe than I can tell you in a half hour or whatever time this will take this evening. So I recommend, if you want to see the positive side, what Gabe created out of his illness, but not in spite of it, in full consciousness of it. As he said, he knew about Michel Foucault's famous claim, madness is the absence of the work. Madness means futility, that you cannot accomplish anything. And he said, I'm going to prove Foucault wrong. I will turn madness into the work. I will put it to work. And certainly in the Infinite Cube, he did that. You should also watch this space for sometime next year. Carmen is making her film about his life. This is my book about his life. But next year, we hope her film, A Sister's View on Her Brother, will come out. I mean, every parent feels like their kid is special, lovable, terrific. So we're not unusual in that way, but I do think we had an unusual son who did turn schizophrenia into something else. Now, I don't want to read too long because I want to let you guys ask questions, and I also want to get questions from Bill, who's right here on the phone next to me. So I thought I would jump ahead to, what page is it? Page 80. I have a chapter in here called He Was Too Strong for His Own Good. His therapists all testified to his ability to present well, as the jargon puts it. He didn't fit the stereotypical image of schizophrenia as withdrawn, angry, delusional, and all around difficult. He saved that mostly for us in the family. His personal grooming was excellent. He defied the tendency of medications to induce obesity by working out energetically, cycling, skateboarding, and going to the gym. His apartment was quite neat, with books, tapes, and DVDs arranged much more logically than my study. You can see the kind of chaos that I inhabit here. His desk was carefully ordered with drafting tools and materials ready to hand. Being a social butterfly is not part of the stereotype of schizophrenia. At art openings, house parties, and receptions, Gabe would work the room like a skilled politician, meeting new people and engaging them in conversation, handing out his business cards. Live encounters with the faces and voices of others seemed to push away the destructive inner voices that plagued him. But in spite of this empathic, sociable nature, he felt terribly alone in the world. Felt that schizophrenia had caused him to be cast out from our household when our doctors told us, not good for him to live with you. He has to grow up. He has to have independence. And I can tell any of you out there who are caregivers, family members, siblings, who have dealt with somebody with a mental illness, this is a huge issue. How to let go and hold on at the same time, to separate yourself, grant independence, but also build a safety net around him. After his death, our house was jammed with the really hundreds of people, mostly just the neighbors, who knew him and had I mean, so many incredible memories of him. The most frequent adjectives that came up in these anecdotes are sweetness, enthusiasm, brilliance, and openness. One of his dear friends, Mara, who suffered from depression, marked about a day spent with him. Our conversation made a before and after of that day for me. Afterward, we determined that our respective insurance companies should pay for us, providing each other with therapy. And we also determined that I needed to get a new pair of dance shoes. He could segue from small talk, usually for a very short time, to the meaning of life without missing a beat. And therefore, many people who knew Gabe were pretty much unaware that he had a mental illness. But he definitely did. And that was one reason why I think we did not see his end coming, because he was so strong at presenting himself and reassuring us constantly, oh, I'm okay, I'm okay. When we looked in his notebooks after his passing, we realized he was not okay, but he had, as I say, he covered it up. He was too strong for his own good. Okay, final thing I want to look at, and that's this great project he had to create a mega film, 9 hours, on the history of madness across cultures, across time, across the globe. This project, he enlisted me as his research assistant because, you know, I'm an image specialist. I write about images across the media. So he said, okay, Dad, I want you to make my pre-production atlas for this film. I want you to start gathering material. So I did. And in fact, I taught a seminar called Seeing Madness with my colleague, Francoise Meltzer, and her husband, the psychiatrist Bernard Rubin. We taught a course called Seeing Madness. Gabriel participated in it, showed his film Crazy Talk, and we began to assemble this atlas for the film. I mean, it was, I have to admit, a crazy project, but it was one that I became totally wrapped up in. It was going to be a Herculean task, and it was foreshadowed by the ambition of the schizophrenic art historian Abby Warburg, who tried to create a universal atlas of the passions and pathologies of human behavior back in the 1920s. It was Warburg's therapy to get him out of the mental hospital where he'd been confined for schizophrenia. So in the last few years, Gabe's fantasies about his film were merging with my own, and his dream as a filmmaker was taking over my life as a scholar. I couldn't tell who was taking over whom. Was I swallowing up his project, making it mine? Either way, I'm stuck with it. I am still inside of it. Some part of me went over the edge with Gabe and is still falling and flying with him. Feels like the best part of me. Did it go with him into the case, that is, into the world that he created, that he was? I can't let him go. And I still don't know how to end this book, or if I really want to. It hasn't done anything to assuage my guilt for failing him as a father, failing to keep him alive. But it certainly has not lessened as well my sense of wonder at the life he gave us. I didn't want to try to claim he was a great undiscovered artist, a Van Gogh or something like that, but someone who felt that level of ambition struck down before he was able to fulfill it. What I think he gave us was something more profound than a body of work. Foucault maybe was finally right. It was an idea, a concept of transforming schizophrenia into something useful, putting it to work. Gabe never completed his infinite cube, but he did make a model. Anthony Gormley brought it into the world. He never made his 9-hour film or walked on the red carpet at the Academy Awards. But he gave me a model for how to survive and, for a time, too short, prevail over schizophrenia. In the absence of the work, he gave me a job that'll never be finished. And that's enough reading. Let's have a conversation. Bill, are you still there?
I am here, and I am once again moved, deeply moved. This is a beautiful, beautiful book for those of you who are tuned in and attending tonight. This is an exquisite and painful and inspiring book. And the pieces you read, Tom, really, I think, represent that. It's funny. It's narrated beautifully. The choice of words, the language is extraordinary. You know, when you say, Tom, I can't let him go, the beautiful thing about this book is you haven't let him go. You've actually lifted him up. And one of the things, as you know, and I'll tell others, is that, you know, there are many, many ways to deal with the devastating, crushing loss that of a child. But your family has done something that has continued to just move and inspire me, and that is that each of you, Carmen in filmmaking, Janice in writing and in music, and you in this extraordinary memoir, have kept Gabe alive and have used art as a way to, you know, engage with him, with his life, with his work, and to keep not just the memory of him, but the reality of Gabe with us. So I commend you totally on doing this. It's an extraordinary piece of work, and I urge everyone to get it, read it, give it to a friend. I wanted to ask you just a couple of things, Tom. You talked about the fact that, you know, you have pictures of Gabe staring out the window, and that notion that he talked about taking Haldol was like living underwater. I was captivated right from the start with the cover photo, and maybe you'd say a word about the photo, and maybe you can hold it up so others can see it.
Yep, I'm doing that.
Say a word about that particular picture, where it comes from.
Well, it is in a way the central story of the book. This photo was taken from the window of a monastery just outside of Nice, looking out over the Mediterranean Sea. I had taken Gabe with me. He was, I think, 19, 20 at the time. And we'd flown to Paris. And then the next day, after staying overnight in Paris, we flew to Nice. And at the opening reception for the academic conference I was at, I couldn't find him. I went looking for him. I found him huddled under a stairway, curled up in a fetal position and sobbing. And he wouldn't let me touch him. When I asked him what's wrong, he said, "You of all people should know what's wrong." And I said, "No, I don't." So, to make a long story short, I told the organizers, "Listen, we have to get to the hotel." So they took us to the monastery where the conference was going to be, and they ushered us into this enormous, dark, high-ceilinged room. And he went and threw open these wooden shutters, and I took the picture of him looking out. At that moment, he burst out and said, "Oh, Dad, I feel so much better."
Right.
It was like cure by landscape, or cure by just that moment of being able to look on this magnificent view and feel the unbounded infinity of the sea and a beautiful day. This was June, early 90s. We got on our snorkel equipment. He said, "I'm totally, whatever that was, I don't know what it was. I'm totally over it." So we went snorkeling, and we spent the next 3 days. I sort of skipped most of the conference, I confess. And we drove on the Upper Corniche, rented a convertible so that we could play James Bond racing around the curves. It was one of the most terrifying moments I've ever had with him, but also it was like this is something I know people who have suffered from mental illness know this. You can go from the depths to the heights very rapidly.
Right.
And Abby Warburg, when he was in the asylum, they said he's crazy as a loon until 4 o'clock in the afternoon. And then when we serve tea and Ernst Cassirer comes over to talk, they talk philosophy for a couple of hours. So the idea that the mentally ill are they are just what their illness is, not so. Certainly not for him, and I don't think most people are capable of springing out of it, going into something else. And of course, we wanted to encourage those things. Medication flattens that.
Right.
But that's what that picture is about.
It's a beautiful picture. It's one of my favorite pictures of Gabe. But, Gabe himself, your point about him wanting to make something out of madness, not wanting to succumb to it. And I know you talk in the book about not wanting to fuss over labels. And Gabe himself both appropriated and rejected certain labels. And in my world of teaching and schooling, where we exist in a toxic habit of labeling, I was very taken with your attempt to push back, to go deeper, to never accept the notion that someone could be summed up by a term like schizophrenia. Say a word about labeling.
Yeah, it's strange. I mean, if you are a caregiver and you go to the doctor and the doctor says, okay, this is what it is. It's bipolar. It's depression. It's schizophrenia. That's the most awful. And then you look it up and you get a huge menu of symptoms. And then if you go to the DSM-4 or 5, or I'm sure the 6 is on its way, you get a kind of menu of possible medications with side effects and so forth. Unfortunately, in our time, the talking cure is pretty much neglected. I mean, not totally, thank heaven. But those, let me just say about one reaction I had when these labels would come. Your first feeling is, oh, good. Now we have a name for it. And then the next is, yeah, and so what happens? As Gabe put it, you have to understand there are the symptoms of schizophrenia. I know what those are. There's also the stigma, the label that goes with it, the thing that, of course, completely damages your life prospects. We counseled him not to be too open about it, but he liked to say to people, I have this illness, I've been diagnosed with schizophrenia. And people would say, that's funny. You seem perfectly normal. And he would say, that's because I'm heavily medicated, man. So the labels are a double-edged sword.
Exactly.
They give you maybe a feeling of temporary relief that once you have a name, you have control over it. But it's not like saying you got diabetes, here's what you do. Or that you have cancer, here's the treatment. It's much more complicated. And it reaches out into your entire network of relationships. So
Right.
I know families, when somebody goes crazy, the family suffers along with him. In some sense, the more I have learned about what other people have gone through, the more I feel like we were lucky. We had 20 years of complicated ups and downs, conflicts and wonderful moments of intimacy and love. Some people, one person we met at NAMI, the National Association for Mentally Ill, said, I haven't been able to see my son in 5 years. Why? Well, has schizophrenia, but he blames it all on me. And if he were to find out where I live, he would come and kill me. So I've got to take care of him by building a safety net around him, paying his rent, but never letting him know what my address is. Can you imagine? People say there's nothing worse than losing a child, but what is it to lose your child in that way? I think even worse. We lost him, alas, but we had him. We held him with us for a significant time.
No, it was one of the extraordinary things to witness and to participate in. And I think, one of the things that I think is extraordinary in the work, in your work, is that, as you point out, you had him, you were able to function in many ways. You say at one point, everyone goes crazy in their own way, reminding me of Tolstoy, that happy families are all alike, but every unhappy family is unhappy in its own way. But you all actually face this thing in an extraordinary way. And maybe you'd say a word about how you and Janice survived as a couple, acting and loving in spite of these incredible stresses and difficulties.
Well, it became clear to us soon after the onset, when he was, his late teenage years, coming home from college, that either we were going to have to work together to manage his life, or it was going to drive us apart. Because one thing, but when people are crazy in the family, they know every secret a family has. They know every button that you can push.
Right.
So I have another friend who's been alienated from his daughter for years, who says his daughter has said such hateful things, they can't talk to her anymore. So they can have a very divisive effect. So Janice and I had to plan strategy almost on a daily basis. Sometimes I would ask her, if I got up in the morning, she would come down, she'd say, so who is he today? Or not how is he today, but who is he? We have one episode. I could find the spot in the book, but I'll just tell you. One time he was at the kitchen table, and he'd been arguing more with a louder voice, kind of being abusive toward Janice, and I had been upstairs working. So I came down, and he's in the middle of telling her that she's, just not doing anything right. So I said, okay, it's, my turn to take over the next shift. A little sarcastic. And we all burst out laughing,
Wow.
including him.
Wow.
Which didn't last long. Then he said, wait, so I'm a job, am I? You're going to take a shift? And I said, yeah, this is hard work. We're trying to work with you, trying to help you, be there for you, but you have to come halfway. All that. So it's, I didn't want to read too many of those episodes for you. You can read them in the book. And if you want to see what the dark side is, how difficult it is to be the caregiver, to still love and nurture your mental traveler. One thing I think you have to realize is that we're all mental travelers. And some of us have a much more difficult road, and we have to help others along it. And I also felt, more toward the end of his life, when he was getting apparently so much better. He was independent. He was making movies. He was writing. I felt like, I'm actually quite lucky, because if I was a father of, he'd gone off to be a stockbroker or a big law firm, I would never see him. He wouldn't have time for his old man. But so I began to, that's why when he said, okay, I want you to be my assistant on my film, I jumped at it. I also did not take the path of trying to be his co-director or anything like that, because one time I was criticizing something he wrote, and he said, he got mad, and I said, well, do you want honest criticism from me? You want me to tell you my opinion or not? He said, no, I don't want your opinion. Save your criticism for your academic friends. For what I want from you is unqualified support. All right, just do that and tell me it's great. Then we'll be fine. So I said, okay. I'm your research assistant. That's it. I loved that part of it. I was happy not to try to be his co-creative artist. I just wanted to feed him material and let him do what he could do with it.
Well, he was an extraordinary young man, and you set out to specify and commemorate this unrepeatable life, and I think you've accomplished it in way over the top. And it's a beautiful memoir, and it's really a double memoir. And I really recommend that folks pick it up, read it, give it to friends. And I think we should open it up to other questions. But
Okay.
Thank you so much, Tom.
Well, thank you, Bill. And before I'm not going to let Bill sign off because I imagine some of you have questions for him too. I want to emphasize what a big part of Gabe's life Bill was. Bill was his film buddy when I was busy. They would hang out. Bill and Bernadine were our next door neighbors for many years. And Gabe sort of grew up with them right there. So, and this book, Bill was the first reader. He read the first words of it and said, well done, keep going.
Right. No criticism, just keep going. Right.
No, he gave me some criticism too, actually.
I'm kidding. But again, thank you. And I think we should open it up.
Okay, let's open it up. Maggie, you have some questions.
Yes, Tom. I have a question from John C. O'Neill. Are there prodromal signs of an imminent suicide with someone suffering from schizophrenia? In Gabe's case, apparently there weren't any. What conversations can parents have with their child, or what questions can they ask to determine if he or she is considering suicide anytime soon? And again, that's from John C. O'Neill.
Yeah. Well, thank you, John. John just wrote a lovely review, by the way, of Mental Traveler, and he's had his own experience with this whole kind of situation. Yeah, this is Suicide Month, as you know, and I wish I had a good answer. I don't. The only sign we had was Gabe told us many times that he would never kill himself. But there were moments when we did worry. Once when I was driving with him and we started getting into an argument, he threatened to jump out of the car while we were driving. And I just pulled over to the side and said, "No, what? You can't be serious." And his mother, Janice, was very scrupulous about monitoring signs of that, asking, because when he moved into Marina City, the famous Goldberg building in downtown Chicago, found a beautiful apartment there. We were worried about its balcony. And he just assured us completely, I would never do anything like that. So that's why I say he was too strong for his own good. He could cover it up. There's people like, I've read memoirs of people like Ellen Sachs who made multiple suicide attempts. She has schizophrenia, and her wonderful memoir, The Center Cannot Hold, is all about this. Mm-hmm. And she was trying to monitor herself. When am I in danger of doing it? In some ways, what schizophrenia does is make it hard for the person themselves to know when it's coming. Gabe did not leave us a note. Our best guess is that he tapered off on his medication because there is this thing in schizophrenia called the Everest moment. When somebody thinks, I'm doing really well here, and I can do even better. And so they say, but the only way to do that is to taper off on this damn medication that's suppressing my creativity. Mm. And when that happens, the voices, which are intensely destructive, and the hallucinations can come on, and before you know it, you're just doing it. You might be doing it in a state of complete delusion. So it's a very dangerous illness in that way. Depression also can lead to suicide, but people who are depressed tend to, the depression itself is filled with pretty legible signals. So I'm sorry, that's not a very good answer because it just says it's really hard. The day he took his life, we talked to him on the phone that morning. He was supposed to come to Hyde Park to go to a ball game with me, and he said, "I don't feel good. I'm not coming." But this had happened before. So sorry, John. I wish I had a really good answer for you.
I think that is a really good answer. That's a wonderful answer. Another question we have from Max Freund is, it seems to me that the avant-garde, surreal, and sometimes psychedelic, and yet deeply philosophical nature of Gabe's creative work was in many ways a synthesis of your work on meaning of image and Janice's freeform new music. How do you feel about your own creative expression? How do you feel that your own creative expression influenced Gabe? How do you feel he took it in through his lens of schizophrenia?
Well, you see things of yourself in your offspring. Of course, we shared some passions. Michael Jordan, which fed both of our dreams of grandiosity, of music, the music of Bob Dylan, of Leonard Cohen. We played and sang those, and he rewrote Bob Dylan's Desolation Row and turned it into a film with accompanying cartoons illustrating his life on the streets. The difference between Gabe and me was, as you may have noticed in the opening story, he portrayed himself as the one who was in touch with reality. He regarded me as the one who was out of touch because I'm a professor. Look, this is my reality. Books and images. And Janice in the avant-garde music scene as well. He participated in that a lot. He did a lot with Janice in her performances and concerts. He was always there. He would hand out programs. He would do stage management. So he was part of our life right straight through, which I now think of as this fantastic gift that we had 20 years really of adult life, difficult, but I wouldn't trade it for anything, what he gave us. But sure, he was, his ambition as a filmmaker that's where our ambitions merged, because I decided after his passing that his idea to create an atlas of madness, I said, well, Abby Warburg tried it in the 1920s with the Atlas of the Passions. But now we have a different atlas. For one thing, we're in a world of collective madnesses. So there's going to be a sequel to this book, which will take me back to my comfort zone in scholarly work. It'll be called Seeing Through Madness. It'll grow out of that seminar, and it's actually almost written. But he was such a densely integrated part of our lives. And of course, his sister Carmen is going to be making a film about him too. In fact, the film is well underway, and if we could do screen sharing, I would show you a clip from her trailer or pilot film. It's called Infinite Light, but you can go see it on his website. Just look into his, browse around and you'll find it. Infinite Light is the title of it.
Our next question comes from Daniel Tiffany. How Hi, Tom. This was so deeply moving and revealing. I wonder if you would be willing to say something about madness and work as it might, and madness and work as it might become evident in the affinity between madness and collaborative or creation, relational creation. What can we learn from Gabe's work and his collaborators about the future of collaborative efforts?
Well, that's what I'm trying to find out. He was a good collaborator with people. Janice made a music video called Scat Rap Counterpoint, in which he did much of the stage management, camera work, behind the scenes work. He knew how to work in a film crew. You know, films aren't made by solo at all. If you browse through his website, you'll see lots of instances where he's bringing his friends and family into his world or going into theirs. I don't know if there's lessons about collaboration there, but to me, the best moments for us as a family were when I could feel like we were working together, that we were making something happen. And one of our forms of collaborative work, which I think, Daniel, you may have seen, not far from where you're living in Venice, we would build all-day sandcastles. That is my own contribution to the visual arts. I'm quite a gifted sandcastle builder. And and that sandcastling is definitely a collaborative kind of work. You have to work solo at times, but the pile, you got to make the pile together. You have to, assign different tasks. And then you have to let it go.
Our last question is from Alice Kim. Thank you so much for sharing Gabe with all of us. I'm very much looking forward to reading this book. As Bill often says, writing itself is an act of discovery. What did you learn about yourself or Gabe through the process of writing the book? Were there any surprises?
Lots of surprises. And this is something, I never knew when I started this book really what the arc of it was, where it would come out. I had lots of stories to tell about him because he was a vivid and lovable person. But I learned a number of things that surprised me. One was the porousness of the boundary between madness and sanity. The idea that it is a threshold that all of us cross over. I don't think anybody gets out of life unscathed. Another way of saying we are all mental travelers, and we all have our moments. Some of them are what you might call the normal madness, the deep sadness, grief, or anxiety. Gabe had 3 favorite superheroes that he treated as alter egos. One of them was Wolverine, who for him was a figure of melancholia and depression and misanthropy. Wolverine doesn't want to be around people. The other was Dark Phoenix, who is schizophrenic and who has omnipotent thoughts. She can move matter with her mind. And she is absolutely mad, and she could destroy the universe with her mind. But the third one, Spider-Man. I said, why Spider-Man? He said, he's a graduate student. So it's as if, for any of you out there who've gone through graduate school, I'm sure there were moments and you said, what the fuck am I doing here? This is insanity. Or falling in love and being disappointed in love. That was a huge thing for him. He had a broken heart and never got over it. So I think that's one thing that he revealed to me was that, he confirmed Plato's deep insight that madness is fundamental to the human species. It's not some aberration. It's something that we all experience more or less. Some of us to a great degree, so others to, for episodes and so forth. So that was it. And but the main thing I learned also was how the tables can turn in a father-son relationship, and how I could come to no longer feel like I was looking after him, but that there would be a day when he would look after me. In fact, in some ways, I wrote a chapter called "He Killed the Future," because I had this fantasy of a future where he's going to go on, he's going to be fine. There's no danger. He's overcome this illness. I was, in retrospect, too optimistic. I was completely shocked by his ending. But one thing I learned about that was that I was coming to feel intellectually and emotionally dependent on him, and that's been a huge part of losing him. This feeling like I lost a future that I was counting on when I would be old. And we had a little taste of that. One chapter talks about the time when I had a back injury, and he became my caregiver for a time, and he was a wonderful caregiver. In fact, I could tell he really liked sort of having me at his mercy, and also being the person who was looking after me, pushing me around in a wheelchair. So, but I'm still learning more things, because the book has opened up for me not just our own situation, but windows into other people who've had their mental traveler in their midst, or who've gone through it themselves. And so I feel like the lessons are not complete.
Thank you so much. I think it's time to bring Janice on. Janice, let me toggle your mic and untoggle your video.
There I am.
Hi.
Hello, everybody. I want to just check on the sound of the flute, because I'm afraid that there could be too much echo, and we might have to fix that. So can we just do a sound check?
It was,
Is this okay?
perfect.
Little echo, please. Okay. Bill, did you want to mention anything? I'm reading the poem that you would ask me to do.
Say again.
What? You're asking Bill something?
I'm going to read the poem, Bill. Okay, Bill, you had asked me to read a certain poem, which I'm going to do. Do you have any other questions or comments?
Okay.
No, that's the one you wanted.
Okay, at the end of the book, there are 14 poems that I have written, and I haven't thought of myself as a poet that much, but rather that this was an exploration of Gabe's life and his passing. Now I have probably over 50 poems, and this is kind of a selection. Some of them are, I think, more just fantasizing various situations, but generally I'm trying to understand what was happening in Gabe's own mind and in his life. So there are a lot of different kinds of approaches I take to this. So this is one that's called, This Is Not a Haiku. 5 fucking miserable months since Suicide Sunday. Killing constant creation. Dying, death, destruction. Leaving loving life, family, murdered by the voices. So this was a shorter one. There is an actual haiku here. I just wanted to read a little bit of another one, which is going along with some of the things that Tom talked about. So this is a dialogue between Gabriel and me about what was driving him literally over the edge. And this is toward the end. I escaped. Oh, Raylan, I will be free of them. I will be free. I did not will this. I did not want this. Forgive me. There is nothing to forgive. I embrace you. Stay with us as you are now. We'll have to be with you as you are now. Let me just lower my sound because Okay, this is a piece that I wrote in 2014. I actually had begun it a little bit earlier and done some improvisations on the basic material until it was in a form that I wanted to put out as a flute piece. I also have plans eventually to write a string quartet, which is based on the idea of the infinite cube. And I have a poem about that you would see in the book as well. And some of the things, the imagery and the meaning of the cube as it was for Gabe. And I hope to translate that into sound. This piece is called The Light That Burns, and it comes from one of Gabe's favorite quotes, and some of you do know this. This is from Blade Runner. And this is that scene between Tyrell and Roy. Roy's a replicant who can do almost anything. He's incredibly strong and pretty evil. And his time has come because he can't live forever. And he says to Tyrell, I want more life. And Tyrell says, no, Roy, your time is over now. Remember, the light that burns twice as bright burns half as long. And those of you who know the film will know what happens next. And those of you who don't need to hear exactly the imagery. So this is a piece for flute, but it's with voice, using the text as kind of a jumping off point for the musical imagery. The piece also has a short motive, which is based on Gabe's name, and it's G-A-B-flat-E. So you'll hear that at various points as an identification, and the rest really deals with, as I said, the imagery of the text. The light that burns twice as bright burns half as long.
I think we have some free. The connection's like a little bit. Thank you so much. Jen,
Thank you.
Okay, I had no sound. Hold on.
thank you both so much for your wonderful presentation tonight. Do you have anything else to add?
Thank you, Book Soup, for hosting us. It's been wonderful. I hope we'll be able to come to LA soon and walk in your door. That would be lovely. Be safe, everybody. And thank you, all you people who've signed in. I'm looking at, there are almost 120 people in this audience, and I'm just overwhelmed. It's a testimony to who he was, really. And if any of you have things you wanted to ask that didn't come up in the discussion, please contact me. I'm always happy to talk about him. And so, bye for now.
Thank Bill, Book Soup and Bill, both.
Yeah, Bill, you want to say goodnight? Anything
Thank you very much. Thanks, Tom. Thanks, Janice. This was an incredibly illuminating and inspirational night. Thank you so much.
Thank you. And that's a wrap on our presentation. Thank you again to our guests and to all of you who tuned in this evening. We greatly appreciate everyone's time and your support of independent bookstores. Again, if you're interested in purchasing a copy of Mental Traveler, please click the green button at the bottom of your screen. We're also accepting donations on our website. If you'd like regular updates on our upcoming events, make sure to follow us on Crowdcast and subscribe to our newsletter. Have a great evening, everyone, and stay safe. Thank you.
Okay, Maggie, Dan, you still